Are we being invaded by aliens finally? Is it a fake alien invasion, or are the world governments engaged in a secret space war? I think it's the latter. We have a lot of videos of things falling out of the sky, things on fire in the sky, things hovering in the sky over Kazakhstan. Last week, a UFO over Philadelphia. Another thing falling to the sky, I believe in Japan, fireball. More reports of things on fire streaking through the sky. People are looking up and freaking out. Or is it a lot of AI? Or is it space debris? As your resident space lawyer from Cashman and Cashman Space Law, I think it's a lot of debris from low Earth orbit, from the very highest parts of the atmosphere here in the Earth world. And things are falling down because I think things are being attacked. And I think there is a program happening right now in outer space that our governments are shooting down each other's satellites. That is obviously the future of war. That is why Trump started Star Force, Space Star Force. It is currently 4 a.m. where I'm at because I'm about to hit the road with the family. So that's why I sound like I've had 1,000 cigarettes and I'm just now waking up. Actually, I've been awake for 45 minutes, so I have no excuse. But Space Force. Trump started Space Force for this very reason. Not for aliens. I think that is going to be a psyop. I think that is a psyop. Doesn't mean we're not surrounded by demons, because they are literally everywhere, especially in Washington, D.C. I've walked around there. I've seen Adam Schiff. I walked past Adam Schiff one day. I swear that was a straight-up demon in a skin suit, just like Newsom. And maybe Trump. Man, Trump's like a day away from posting a drawing of Muhammad. What an Easter Sunday post he put out there, huh? Happy Easter to everybody. I hope everyone had a wonderful Easter, spent wonderful time with their family. We had a really nice Easter despite a lot of rain, but it was the rain was reminding me of Mary's weeping, but how the weeping turns from despair to joy at the news of the resurrection. And I love Easter Sundays that are beautiful blue skies and all the flowers and trees are blossoming, and it's just such a visual reminder of the resurrection and the beauty of that. But when it's raining on Easter, I also think of the beauty, but I think of the tears of joy and Mary weeping from despair to delight. But I hope everyone had a really happy Easter. It was a beautiful day. You know, if you're not plugged into the news, I try to take some time off on Sundays. But things find you. And I saw Trump saying, "Praise be to Allah." Oh, man. It's a wild time to be alive. But when is it not? So when it comes to the secret space war program, I'm looking back, because when people, last week we were talking about Alex Jones, and people say the Alex Jones is right jar, which is filled with money, he called 9/11 before it happened, and people are like, he's a prophet. I'm like, nope, he's not. When I asked him about this, he was very straightforward, a very genuine answer. And he just says it's because he reads everything. If you've ever watched InfoWars, you know that they've got this great camera from up above that looks down at Alex and at his desk while he's filming. And it's just covered in papers that they print out. He's got a producer that prints out things in the morning. And it's articles, tons of articles. And he's just sometimes hours on end reading these articles. And that's for decades, right? So that's something that's been very inspiring to me, having seen it firsthand, but watching him for years and years, being like, he's reading everything. That's what he says to me when I ask him, like, how do you get these things right? He's like, it's just there. It's just they tell you. They tell you it's all out there. Doesn't mean everything they put out there is true, obviously. But they seed the narrative, they seed the culture, they seed the news with like foreshadowing, right? So he's also got a crazy memory, and he'll be like, they mentioned this, like 5 years ago. And so when it comes to fruition, in his memory bank, he can pull out this, this story. He says this is what they said 5 years ago. So it's nothing new. That's why he seems like he's sometimes a time traveler, because he's been reading stuff. So I was thinking about that when I was thinking about Secret Space Wars, and I'm like, what has been written in the past, in the not so distant past, about space weapons? Really diving into my early days, my bachelor's degree at DeVry University, where I decided in 1979 to become a space lawyer. So, from Science Focus, when is this from? So this is just from February this year. I have a few of these. This is when Germany announced plans in February to spend tens of billions of euros on new military capabilities. It wasn't just the size of the investment that raised eyebrows. It was how openly officials talked about what the money might buy. Encrypted communication satellite constellations. Let's read that one more time. Encrypted communications satellite constellations. Inspector, that's in quotes, spacecraft able to maneuver close to other satellites, sensors, trackers, and even lasers capable of interfering with enemy satellites. Of course, we know these things. But I also want to stress, just because they're saying this part out loud doesn't mean that they have other crazier stuff already deployed into low Earth orbit, or down here that is terrestrial, that can hit things that are up high. We've read about the things they've been developing in the war in Ukraine, lasers, for instance, that they're using to shoot down drones. Yes, that is right. Space lasers, Jewish space lasers. Zelensky's Jewish, so if Zelensky's got lasers, that's a Jewish space laser. China's got lasers. We've got lasers. They've had lasers. Okay, and I imagine, I'm just gonna put that out there, that we'll see more lasers this year. Let's try to remember I said that. We'll come back. We're going to see more lasers in 2026. It just seems like a good year for more lasers. It's my birthday, by the way. So happy birthday to me. I turned 41 today. Crazy. And I'll spend it driving with the family through the beautiful country, the countryside of West Virginia and Virginia, some North Carolina. And I love driving around this awesome country. I hate flying. It's almost been a year since my last flight. Almost exactly a year since my last flight, when I went to Florida for Danny Jones' show. I flew and I was like, you know what? This is not a fun experience. Danny's show was a lot of fun. Flying was not fun. And that includes the airport and and being in the air. I've never been one that likes flying. I just, so unnatural. But I prefer driving if I can. It takes a little more time, but I like seeing the landscape. I like stopping at random places. I like showing the kids things, random things along the side of the road, these roadside attractions that are still up from the 1950s. And just looking at the land is so beautiful. It reminds me of just the majesty of God. And we like cows. I like stopping and saying, what's up to a cow? And then I might eat them. But love cows. I love the countryside. And that's what I'll be doing on my birthday. And I couldn't think of a better way of doing it with my family on a road trip. I've always loved road trips. So it'll be a lot of music, a lot of laughing, some games, and the kids will be playing Tetris. They've never really had video games. And I'm like, Tetris is a good way. I'm like, Tetris taught your father how to pack a box truck when I was a furniture mover for 10 years. Every day of my life for those 10 years, me and the guy I worked with, who were always on the road in a box truck, we were just like, thank God for Tetris. When you're packing a box truck with pianos and armoires and sofas and little glass objects that you can't break and paintings. Tetris, man. Tetris really prepared me for that job. Real life Tetris. I wish there was a competition for box truck movers and furniture movers. We would have crushed. I mean, we were really good. We were really fast. Anyway, for decades, space was viewed as a peaceful backdrop to conflict on Earth. It supported operations below, but was never thought of as a battlefield by most. Unless you've watched any sci-fi, they prepared you for the fact that the future of mankind is wars in space. Wars in space. Not anymore, says the article. Now Germany is among a growing list of countries treating space not just as infrastructure, but as a domain that may need to be actively defended, contested, and potentially fought over. This is where space law comes into play. I'm going to be a trillionaire. When the space wars break out, when World War X is in space, Cashman's going to kill it. Oh, man. I'm not waking anybody up. Don't worry. I know you're like, it's like 4 a.m. Why is he yelling? I'm in the doomsday bunker and it's soundproof. Also, Germany, really. I mean, I love it, but always kicking off big wars. Knew it'd be you. And also, you might think of like Sergeant over here, Sergeant Peyton, telling us that it sounds like Peyton believes in space. If you're out there, Sarge, I'd love to hear from you. It's been a while, but he told us Hitler's alive on Mars. Probably with some technology that we don't, the peons don't understand yet. But perhaps this is what Germany's preparing for, to link up with Mars using their descendant of their ancient breakaway civilization that Werner von Braun knew about, their descendant being Elon Musk, who wants to go to Mars with all the information he scraped off of Grok that you've fed into Grok so Grok can teach its rockets how to fly on its own to Mars, to fake Mars. And I mean, the history of like Peter Thiel and Elon and South Africa and Thiel's German connections. Dude, Paperclip runs deep. Paperclip runs so deep. We don't even know the extent of Paperclip. I'm on a tangent. Yes, I know. But we're talking about space, and these guys are helping to build out the technology that will be deployed in space for the space wars, and perhaps the space wars that are happening right now. And that's why things are falling out of the sky. It's because all the countries are shooting down everyone's satellites. And then I'll get back to this. I know. I'll get back. It's my birthday. I can tangent if I want to, okay? You're like, you tangent all the time, bro. I know. Give me a break. They've been warning us in articles for like 4 years now about the what they call the internet apocalypse. They're blaming it on solar flares, the poles situation, which I don't really believe in, but fascinating. We've talked to Davidson about the poles shifting. I'm not sold on that idea, but I think it's fascinating. But that's what the more mainstream articles like to blame this idea of the the upcoming internet apocalypse. When we'll lose everything, we'll lose the internet. I think they just want to turn that off. I think they're preparing. We talked last week about being on the cliff of the next big narrative jump. Clearly, something's going on because Trump and Hegseth, everybody's talking about UFOs. Everyone's saying we need UFO disclosure. Of course we do. I want to know what's going on. What are they hiding? What are they seeing? What are they shot down allegedly? That video of Marco Rubio circulating of shooting down things is old, but it is interesting. But that is about the Chinese weather balloon from 2023. But you see how they twist things out of context. They put a new image of an alien on it. They throw it into the internet, and then boom, everyone's talking about aliens. And Marco Rubio saying we're shooting down UFOs. Technically, sort of yes, but it's old, and that's what happens all the time on the internet. You guys need to be aware of that. I'm sure you already are, but it's worth mentioning. Anyway, UFO disclosure. We're on a narrative jump on the cliff of on the edge of the cliff of the next narrative jump. UFOs are now not taboo, and they want to turn off the internet. Why do they want to turn off the internet? Because during the last narrative jump, which was when they literally shut the world down. Do you remember that? I'm old enough to remember when they shut the world down. I'm turned 83 today, okay? I'm old enough to remember they shut the world down over the flu. There was no flu. No flu happened at all that year. How amazing is that? No flu, only COVID. And the world shut down. And then some of us, I know a lot of you included, used the internet to subvert that insane narrative, because it was a narrative war, as most of these are. They might be terrestrial or physical wars going on, but the narrative war, obviously the fog of war, is a component of that the media industrial complex accelerates, and at the behest of the military industrial complex, really no difference between the two. And they realized, they as in the elites, the nameless ones, the hidden ones, plus the ones in charge, hated that we could subvert the narrative with the internet. And that's why they started to censor, kick people off, shadow ban more. And that's why the government went to people like Zuckerberg and said, hey, you got to start censoring because they're going to kill grandma. If they don't get the vaccine, they're going to kill grandma. My grandma died right during the end of COVID. She didn't care about COVID. She didn't care about masks. She didn't care about any of that. She had leukemia. She cared about leukemia. And she went to the hospital to get that dealt with. She did her thing, but she had already beaten breast cancer. By the time COVID came around, it was a joke to her. And she especially laughed about IBM and vaccine passports. She thought this was just ridiculous. And my grandma was someone who voted liberal and Republican throughout her life. She never really thought of herself as one or the other. She was just like one of that old school people, old school politics. She wasn't as like plugged in to watch. She watched the regular news channels, but she was like, I like the cut of this guy's jib, and voted for various people left and right. I think they hated Obama, but she didn't like Trump either, but for all the wrong reasons, because she was believing like NBC News at that point. She watched like 3 channels. She wasn't reading Danielle Steele books or whatever those books were that you buy at the supermarket when you're waiting to check out. Those are her favorite books. She read all the time and played cards, gin, rummy, and poker. She's good. She was good at playing cards. She beat me every time. But anyway, I don't know how I got there, but shout out to my grandma, rest in peace. One of the greatest women I've ever met in my life. But the internet apocalypse is upon us. They want to turn it off. And how I got to that tangent was thinking, if we are in a space war, which I believe we are, they're going to try to shut off your internet. I mean, we've already heard these stories about how there is massive delays in how the news from Iran and the war is reaching us. So sometimes you have to look at like foreign papers to see what they're saying. Doesn't mean it's true, obviously, but to see what they're saying, because sometimes things don't reach us. We had a jet shot down yesterday in Iran. They rescued the guy a few hours later, thank God. But we don't know other things that are going on. I mean, that is how war goes. But it's just so interesting that they have to change ways to prevent news from getting to us from war. For various reasons, because they don't want the enemy to know, the enemy, whoever that is, everyone's the enemy now, including ourselves. And they also don't want you to know because they know a lot of people don't support this. And if they see the people who don't support the war are seeing news that is confirming that the war is bad or not going well, despite what people are saying, despite what Trump is saying, that doesn't look good either. So on top of all that, then, if they turn off the internet at some point, either because countries are going after one another and they want to shut down your internet capabilities, or because our own government doesn't want us to have the ability to subvert the narrative, whether it's about UFOs. Could you imagine if they turn off the internet, if they found a way to turn off the internet and then Project Bluebeam happens? That is a very real possibility. That's why we have to be so prepared. Because was it the day before Easter? I forget. I don't think it was yesterday. I saw some satellite footage, or drone footage rather, of, it was like in China when they do the giant dragons with drones. That someone made a Jesus with drones. I don't like it. I mean, we should praise Christ, however. Or maybe not however, because there's ways you just don't. There's people with really bad theology that praise in ways that I think are not good. But I don't know. Something about drones, just, I don't like it. But obviously, the implication here is that, for me, in my brain, this is why I don't like it, is because of how blue beamy it is, you know? Project Bluebeam, for those who just now found this channel for the first time, I've never heard anyone else talk about Project Bluebeam, is the old theory that there will be a hologram projected into the sky that will show fake aliens or a false messiah returning to band the human race together. So that has been a theory for some time. But on this show, we have speculated that perhaps Bluebeam has morphed, the idea of it has morphed over time, and that they have been kind of like slow burning Bluebeam into our consciousness through this slow drip disclosure and get you on board and prepared mentally by the time they try to drop this information on us. It seems like we're getting closer. I don't know. I'm not going to buy it. Like, why would we think the government has lied about everything? I mean, they lied about how they lied. All the governments together lied about shutting down the world. I mean, some of them maybe really believed, we're fearing this virus. But we knew then that this was a lie. Speaking of subverting the narrative, we knew then this was a lie. And a lot of us didn't buy into it. But the world shut down. That's a pretty big deal. Like, the economy's grinded down to a halt over this idea of flu, rebranded flu. And we have to deal with the consequences of that. It's a pretty big deal. And again, never forget, Epstein died just like under a year earlier than the world shutting down, which is a pretty big story that we're not talking about enough, you know? And we should be. I mean, Bondi's fired. Should have been fired the day after Bindergate, because that was embarrassing. But now Todd Blanche is in charge, and he's no better. Anyway, that's why I want everyone to have it in front of their brains here, that as we approach the new narrative shift, clearly something's going on. It is at the highest levels of government. They are discussing UFO disclosure. I'm sorry if I just got distracted. The ad that just popped up on my screen is for a fake robot pinky. Where am I? Sciencefocus.com. A fake robot pinky just emerged on the screen, and it's for people who have all digits, but it's another pinky down here to help you. The commercial was literally telling you, like, if you want to happen to grab more clementines at once, this fake pinky was for you. Like, it's like, if you want to grab 7 clementines, you need this fake pinky. Okay, all right. That was a lot of tangents. I'm getting back to it, I promise. Thank you for sticking with me. Thank you for being here on this special episode, my 41st birthday episode. And what are we at? This might be like the 199th episode. I should know, but I don't. I don't count. I don't pay attention like I should. Shane went on another tangent. He was about to get back to the story, and now he is trying to figure out what number episode his own show's on. Okay, yeah, you are now tuned into the 199th episode of Inverted World. That's nuts. Wow. Incredible. We are doing it. That's a lot of episodes. That is a lot of episodes for the AI to be listening to so they can make my clone and inject it with all the things I've said on the show. That would be crazy. I have to go to war against that clone soon. Anyway, having a warfighting mindset for orbit is dangerous, says Dr. Michael Mulvihill, a vice chancellor research fellow in astropolitics at Teesside University. Astropoliticians are my nemesis as a space lawyer. You can only imagine. We don't go to the same bars or restaurants. In the space world, we are segregated, thankfully, and astropoliticians are not welcome. You see this? You see this? It means not welcome. If you understand that reference, then you know what I'm talking about. Space had always been framed as a collaborative space. That he's referencing, obviously, the space treaty. You guys all know all about your space law. In about 3 more episodes, I will send out certificates for your space law, and you can be interns at Cashman and Cashman. Even though it was used for military operations, they were usually for communications or reconnaissance to extend military capabilities. It's such a lie, though, because obviously no one ever thought that. We're going to pretend to have a treaty in space. Okay, guys? We're going to pretend to have a treaty. We're all going to get along, but literally no one gets along anywhere at all. So the idea that we're just going to, in space, we'll get along. It's such a farce. Now that's changing. From the United States and China to the UK, France, India, and Japan, governments are pouring money into military space programs. But what exactly do they plan on putting up there? What's he building in there? If you get that reference, let me know in the chat. And where does this militarization lead? I like this subtitle from the next one here. Space was never really peaceful. You think? The idea that space was once a serene, apolitical domain is mostly a myth that governments found useful to promote. Well, I appreciate that sentence from Science Focus because it's true. The U.S. applied a lot of interpretive flexibility to what peaceful activities entailed, says Aaron Bateman, an assistant professor of history and international affairs at George Washington University and the author of Weapons in Space. That is someone, I'm going to look up that book. The simplistic narrative of space systems, the silent sentinels that are keeping the peace between the superpowers, obfuscated quite a lot. In practice, the U.S. and former Soviet Union have been testing weapons in orbit since the dawn of the space age. America, for example, fielded Program 437, a nuclear-tipped ground-to-space anti-satellite system that ran until 1975. They never really end. Okay, then those programs, they just rebrand into other things, and they shoot the sky somewhere else. Russia, meanwhile, equipped a Salyut 3 space station launched in 1974 with a machine gun, which is said to have been test-fired in space. Sick. So soon after they duct-taped hypodermic needles to the noses of dolphins to kill their enemies, they're like, we also got to put a machine gun on a satellite. I mean, that is innovation. You got to love the humans. Perhaps the most infamous demonstration of space war fighting capabilities came on July 9th, 1962, when the U.S. detonated a nuclear warhead at 250 miles above the Pacific in a test called Starfish Prime. I believe this is when they were trying to blow up the dome, the firmament. You guys probably seen those. Those are the theories about the fishbowl. If it's not that one, it's the other time they blew it up, but it was around that time. The electromagnetic pulse from the explosion crippled several satellites and helped prompt the Outer Space Treaty of 1967, which prohibits placing weapons of mass destruction in orbit. Did you guys hear that? That's going to be my new favorite thing to do when I'm in the Doomsday Bunker. Did you guys hear that? There's always weird sounds coming. It's like something clawing at the top to get in. Should I let it in? What's changed, Bateman argues, isn't intent so much as scale, sophistication, and candor. There's much more overt signaling from the U.S. government now, he says. The X-37B is a case in point, a military space plane that conducts classified multi-year missions in orbit, yet whose launches the U.S. Air Force now marks with press releases. Once governments went to great lengths to obscure exactly this kind of activity, now they publicize it, and America is far from alone. Obviously, they publicize it because this is part of the propaganda. Hey, guys, look what we're doing. Our people, look, Glenn Beck's crying at our rocket. Glenn Beck is crying at our rocket. Does Russia see that Glenn Beck is crying at our rocket? According to the Secure World Foundation's 2025 Global Counterspace Capabilities Report, 4 nations have now demonstrated the ability to physically destroy a satellite. That includes China, U.S., India, and Russia. Wow, India. Did you see their moon landing? I have a hard time believing that. But, Grok is 100,000 Indians typing really fast in a sweatshop. I imagine that they 3D printed something that can go to space, fake space. But the era of explosive demonstrations may be drawing to a close because blowing up satellites is increasingly self-defeating. If people start using kinetic ASATs against stuff, particularly in low Earth orbit, it's going to create a hell of a mess, says Stuart Eaves, a space consultant with nearly 40 years' experience, including time at the UK's Ministry of Defence. Space debris is already a problem for countries operating in space. NASA estimates some 500,000 debris objects, between 1 and 10 centimeters are currently in orbit. The European Space Agency puts the figure at over 1 million. At LEO, that's low Earth orbit velocities, Eaves points out, a 1 centimeter object has the same sort of energy as a hand grenade. Hence why countries are reluctant to make more mess up there. They don't care. It's a landfill. Everything we make turns into a landfill. I know I grew up in a landfill, so I see a landfill everywhere. But in low Earth orbit is just a landfill, just like the oceans, just like the giant island of plastic that has new species growing inside of it. The rise of vast satellite constellations make kinetic attacks even more irrational, unless we are in a new phase of insanity and chaos and all these wars, and they need to shut down systems, or even like iron domes, or we are currently building the Golden Dome that Elon's building. He has been contracted to build out the Golden Dome, our version of the Iron Dome. There are roughly 16,000 trackable active objects in orbit, with Elon Musk's Starlink alone accounting for approximately 10,000 of them. And that is OG, SpaceX is an OG defense contractor who oversees these satellites. That's why I was also against him being that close to the government. He's already too close to the government, then we let him in, really, plus Teal, who's too close to the government. But no one cared. I understand why, because I wasn't voting for Kamala. Either way, it was not going to be good. Many people warned. We were on this show saying this can't be good, but I was also like, the hero's arc of Trump must be fulfilled. I was caught up in the narrative. See, even I was caught up in the narrative, despite me publicly saying Trump is too close to these people. I felt like I should vote, and I was like, how can we not? After everything that has happened. But I had that bad feeling in the back. And in July, before the election, I'm telling the show, I'm out saying, I want Trump, but my goodness, is he surrounded by evil people? But Kamala was just obviously out of the question. And then, as I say too much on the show, I know, but it's I think a landmark day in Trump 2.0 is the Operation Stargate. And the second that happened, on the second day of office, the fears were confirmed. The evil tech vampires were taking over. They got rewarded for all the bad they have done and that they will continue to do. Rewarded to continue their actions against humanity, against Americans, against the middle class, against the future. And but Trump seems easily manipulated by bad collaborations, which we know about all too well. And what a shame, because it seems like he is, I don't know. I know people defend him still. I don't see how right now. But I am that way for every politician. When there's something that's really great, I'd like to champion that. And we could say perhaps the southern border is shut down, and there's not a lot of. I hope there's not a lot of children being trafficked anymore over the border, but I don't know. Honestly, I don't know, because it's like the news. They can tweak the news, and they also have a lot of now more indie-minded news type people. I don't know if I should call many of them reporters, but on their side, helping to shield any bad news between the public and the administration, which is why I was so adamant about not being a part of the Pentagon press pass people. And I got some flack for that. But I was like, I'm not signing this. I don't want to be a part of this. These rules are antithetical to journalism. They would prevent some of the most important journalism. They would prevent, some of the most important journalism, because we have a history of very important journalism coming out of the Pentagon from people with Pentagon press passes, that from the left and the right, that broke major stories. And sometimes it's because of a leak. And I think that's patriotic. If you think something's wrong, you could be a whistleblower. You can leak. Look, that is how we unfortunately find out about some of these stories, like MK Ultra, like the massacre in Vietnam, when our own soldiers were just murdering children. And that they came out and had to say it. That broke in the 70s, thanks to Seymour Hersh. So that narrative war, it happens on so many fronts. And when the administration has people they're friendly with in the news, that's never good, whether you voted for them or not. Because we shouldn't be loyal to a person in charge, a person in the White House, a person in the Pentagon, a person in Congress, whatever. We should be loyal to God and to the truth. And it is very hard to get the truth, because anything you want to be true, you can just go online and find it, to find whatever it is you need to confirm that bias that you have about that so-called truth. And that goes for everything. So we have to be very careful of that. And back to this article. So if you can't just blow things up, what do you do? The answer increasingly involves subtler methods. Jamming, flooding a satellite signal with noise is one approach that has been used for decades, but more sophisticated options are available too. Russia's cyber attack on the Viasat network on the first day of its invasion of Ukraine in February 2022 was the most significant publicly known example, by sending false commands to modems across Europe. Russian hackers disrupted Ukrainian government communications. Pretty wild. And guys, you ready? You ready for this one? Here's the next paragraph. 4 words. Then there are lasers. Not the Hollywood variety yet. These are usually directed at the optical sensors of surveillance satellites to dazzle or blind them. If you're using an observation satellite photographing Earth from space, shining a laser into those optics effectively blinds it, explains Mulvihill. They're going to start taking out satellites with lasers. If I were a betting man, I would say some of these things flying down from Earth have been hit by lasers. I don't think they're using satellites and machine guns right now. I think it's evolved to lasers. I really think that's a huge possibility. Russia's mobile ground-based laser system, Peresvet, is already deployed to protect its road mobile nuclear ballistic missile forces, according to the SWF report. Meanwhile, China is thought to have at least 5 so-called directed energy sites. Is it going to be this year? I think it could be this year. That this stuff really is like, it's not going to be the big thing that we've talked about in the show. Like, what is that next? Like, it's not going to be a nuke. There's some other weapon they've been developing that they're going to deploy at some point. Like, Trump is really ramping up this idea of just obliteration again. I mean, even though he said he obliterated already. I need to sip my coffee. It is too early for lack of coffee. Oh, man. Crazy. I got something to say. I'm going to say it in a little bit, though. I want to finish the story. Too many tangents, but I have an announcement that you might have already seen on Twitter, but I'll say it in a bit. But I'll try to remember why I was going to say it then, though, as I look at my coffee and taking a glorious sip in the morning. For example, Bateman points to a 2022 incident in which severed fiber optic cables linking mainland Norway to the Svalbard satellite ground station. You don't even have to blow the satellites up or physically destroy the ground stations. If you cut off the links that bring the data from point A to point B, that could also potentially be very attractive to an adversary in a conflict scenario. Okay, so let's get real speculative. What if they fight the astronauts? I don't think they're in real crazy infinite space that they tell us is real. I do think it's possible to be in low Earth orbit though, and like clearly you could be up really high. And what if they go after the astronauts? Could you imagine a world war starting like that? Like it used to be Franz Ferdinand, now it's astronauts, and it'll be international. That's why they have Canada up there. You know, if the Cold War was a two-horse space race, today's environment is considerably more crowded. Still, there are two clear frontrunners: the U.S. and more recently China. China has launched over 1,000 satellites in the past decade. As of late 2024, more than 510 are thought to be intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance capable, according to the U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission. And like I love talking about the Lockheed Martin ones. I just bring up two because they're so fascinating to me, but there are so many up there. But for those who've missed it, Lockheed Martin's got surveillance satellites up there, one with a painting of the devil on it, and it says, "Better the devil you know," and the other has the octopus on it that says, "Nothing is beyond our reach." That is literally what is on the satellites from Lockheed Martin. Against this backdrop, where do middle powers like Germany fit in? Germany's investment may look like a belated attempt to catch up, but there's some sense to it, Mulvihill says. NATO basically relied on America for all of its space capability, he adds. My read is that over the past year, this has become more transactional, more about the ability to have services withdrawn. Germany's Inspector satellites and electronic warfare capabilities would most likely operate under a NATO umbrella, balancing, if only slightly, what the U.S. could restrict. If the middle powers work together, their contribution would be significant. Eves points to past European cooperation frameworks under which France and Germany shared access to each other's surveillance satellites as a model for how middle powers can contribute meaningfully. Middle powers is such a condescending term. I think it's so funny. Oh, you little middle powers, you used to be a world power. You used to want to take over the whole world. Now you are a middle power. I'm so sorry. But Bateman is skeptical that coordination will be smooth. I'm reading I think this is like a UK-based art publication, so it's just funny every time I pause for a split second reading it because skeptical over there is spelled with a C, S-C-E-P, and like maneuver has like more U's in it. It's just spelled very funny. When I wrote for the BBC at once, and watching them BBCify the language was. I was offended. Like, don't you dare make me spell. I forget what word it was. I was like, oh my gosh. It might have been skeptical. It was something like that. This is another quote from Bateman. If history is any guide, it's going to be really difficult. So is a world with more space power safer or more dangerous? Probably both, and certainly messier. It's more chaotic, Mulvihill says. You're seeing that collaborative zone becoming much more fragmented, much more about self-interest and transactional politics. In truth, the stars have never been quite as peaceful as we like to think. The difference now is that as more nations pile in, nobody's pretending otherwise. All right, and now I have this one from 2024. Pentagon moves to declassify some secret space programs and technologies. The United States Department of Defense wants to declassify more space programs in order to boost the nation's military edge in space. I think they're preparing us for space wars. Star Trek, Star Wars, it's coming. As the world's superpowers continue to invest in the militarization of space, it's nice to read a U.S.-based article now. Militarization is spelled with a Z, not an S. It's ridiculous. Anyway, some leaders at the Pentagon believe it's time to declassify some of the secretive space programs in the United States portfolio. To that end, U.S. Deputy Secretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks recently approved a new policy that will reduce the classification level of some highly secret space programs and technologies. The policies that have prohibited sharing this information are outdated and are holding back the U.S. when it comes to superiority in space, according to DoD Assistant Secretary for Space Policy, John Plum. That's a pretty good name for a character. How is that real? What the classification memo does generally is it overwrites really completely overwrites a legacy document that has its roots 20 years ago, and it's just no longer applicable to the current environment that involves national security space, Plum said last week. Again, this is from January 2024. U.S. government declassifies Cold War-era jump seat spy satellites as China and the U.S. vie for the moon. Private companies are locked in their own space race. The policy does not mean that the program and technologies will now be fully unclassified. I think I might have read something that was from an ad that popped in here from another space program, so I got a little jumbled there. The policy does not mean that these programs and technologies will now be fully unclassified and revealed to the public. Instead, it will lower their classification levels in order to share some technologies and programs with private industry and international allies. Raytheon is already a defense contractor. You wonder who this new one is. Maybe Anduril, which is Teal funded. That is probably what that is. They're gonna trying to share now information with private U.S. companies and, like they said, some international allies, some middle powers, so they can develop stuff because we're going to have allied forces in space. And Anduril has been developing some insane things that I don't like, but they're crazy, and everyone has them. Like, for instance, that helmet he put on, this is Palmer Luckey, the head of Anduril. He has that helmet that he showed Rogan, where it allows you to pretty much have a hive mind with, like, I don't know, he said hundreds or thousands of drones at once, and it can operate all together with this helmet. It's pretty wild stuff. Anyway, they want to do this so it can help build an asymmetric advantage and force multiplier that neither China nor Russia could ever hope to match, Plum said in his DoD statement. The move would allow each branch of the U.S. Armed Services to decide their own classification levels rather than spread a blanket DoD policy over all military space programs and technologies. One of the key issues driving this policy change is the use of what are known as Special Access Programs, that's SAP, security protocols that severely restrict the sharing of highly sensitive and classified information. Some of these SAPs are acknowledged, meaning their existence is known to the public, but their details haven't been revealed. Others, however, are unacknowledged, meaning their mere existence is even a secret. So I think a lot of what we've been seeing, and even perhaps some of the stuff that Congress people have seen, we got, I think Burleson has already allegedly seen these UFOs. I think he said that, and Paulina Luna, and they're like, I think it was Burleson who said, it's not like anything we know of. But I tend to go back to this idea that for decades, many, many decades now, we have secretly been building things that people can't understand. And that is perhaps what we've been seeing. I think that you are free to disagree and let me know in the comments below what you think a lot of the stuff is that people are seeing. Some of it's AI, like this video out of Kazakhstan with this UFO that's kind of hovering in the sky. To me, it seems fake. There are previous reports of UFOs in Kazakhstan. There's reports of UFOs everywhere, So it doesn't really mean anything to have a previous encounter or eyewitness of something in the sky. But I just see these videos, and it's, in the age now where it's becoming increasingly difficult to discern reality from AI. I mean, a lot of us still have, I think, a pretty good idea of what's fake and what's not, or at least we know we have to question it immediately, especially when it's too good to be true or too hilarious or too insane. But I mean, sometimes it's real. Sometimes these tweets where Trump says praise be to Allah are real, truths, whatever you call them. But it's really hard. And we inherited the world into, if you're my age, we inherited the world of the internet, smartphones eventually. And, I think a lot of us are still, we have our sea legs about us when it comes to the internet and how things are fake, post-reality, right? But there's older generations who really are at a loss. And like if my grandma were still around, it would have been fairly easy, unfortunately, to convince her of certain things. I remember my grandma getting some like spam email. It was about Trayvon Martin, and It was totally. She forwarded it to me, and it was like, the media. This is something like the media is lying to you. Trayvon Martin is an innocent child. This is what he looked like, today, or before everything went down. And it was a picture of the rapper The Game. She's like, "Can you believe this?" I'm like, "That is The Game." The media does lie, and I'm glad that you are thinking that, and you think that that is a reality that is good. However, you are that is not a real image of Trayvon Martin. That is The Game. I had to walk her through all that, but now I was reading an article like last week about how AI is getting so good at cloning voices, just manipulating voices, learning who you are through the internet, and then making phone calls to try to scam you. So you got to be so careful. And that's, we can only imagine what kind of future we're going to have if we are so lucky by the grace of God, to live a nice long life, meet our grandkids. What crazy technologies are they going to be using to try to scam us? And as plugged in as we are today, there are going to be so many things that are developed while we're old, and hopefully we're still paying attention and we're sharp and we understand, but like, you can't even fathom the things that they're going to be creating. Some of us maybe can, because we read sci-fi, and they're like, there's a whole lot of stuff they haven't made yet from these sci-fi books and movies, but my goodness, they're going to try. They're going to try. Anything we can bring from an SAP level to a top secret level, for example, brings massive value to the war fighter, massive value to the part. Maybe the astronauts that are up there in low Earth orbit and not going to the moon are actually soldiers. And maybe they're up there for another mission. We don't know. Maybe they're being sent up there as a sacrifice. I don't know. It's just so interesting that there is so much space, sky talk right now, alien talk, UFO talk, while we're all watching this launch of Artemis, while we're getting ready for this idea of kidnapping asteroids. It seems like if we were in a narrative of space, the inevitable, not conclusion yet, we're not there yet, but the climax would be some sort of conflict being exposed in space. Perhaps not, obviously. I could just be a crazy person that rants in a doomsday bunker at it's like 4:40 or something in the morning. I love this time of day, by the way. I try to get up really early and write at this time because it's just so peaceful. Have a nice warm cup of coffee, as Agent Dale Cooper would say, a damn fine cup of coffee, and just rant and rave. But it does seem like the things falling out of the sky are debris and not aliens. But who knows? Who knows? Maybe it's Superman, finally. Some officials at the Pentagon have been calling for such a new classification policy for years, arguing that excessive classification has prevented advanced military capabilities from deterring attacks from adversaries, which is one of the main reasons they were created to begin with. This is a lot different than the conversation the government has about the microchips for AI and how they've prevented China from getting them, but they haven't really. China still got them. That's how they made DeepSeek. Which was, for those who forgot, I keep mentioning the Stargate, Operation Stargate, that Trump did on his second day in office, the second go around. That was like the same day or maybe the day after China released DeepSeek, which I was like, oh my gosh, it's the greatest thing. But it was based on our microchips allegedly. Which is why it's so funny that when they say we're in a new AI Cold War with China, I hear you, and we're all making crazy stuff. But it seems to me, at least, that they're making it only based on our things. And they maybe not would have made things that are good without our technology that has somehow been secreted away to China, who also has been caught having secret bioweapon laboratories here. Like, what is going on? That is something we talked about a little bit, but like, that's still a thing. I think it's 2 now. It's 2 now. And I believe we're up to 8 missing scientists, or dead or missing scientists, involved in weird programs, physics and UFO type programs. In a rare show of disclosure, the U.S. Space Force and National Reconnaissance Office revealed a set of general capabilities of the silent Barker Watchdog satellite launched by the United Launch Alliance in September 2023. Before the launch, NRO and Space Force officials told the public that Silent Barker was designed to keep an eye on satellites and spacecraft in geosynchronous orbit, that is also known as GEO. They got a sense of humor. The disclosure was designed to help deter attacks on U.S. satellites. Space Force Lieutenant General Michael Gutlein, commander of Space Systems Command at the time, said. He said this: not only are we going to maintain custody and the ability to detect what's going on in GEO, but we'll have the indications and warnings to know there's something out of the normal occurring. And that goes a long way towards deterrence, he said. The exact capabilities and specifications of many of the U.S. military's and intelligence community satellites remain unknown. Space Wars. We're going to need a new song for that. We need a theme. Anyone out there wants to make a theme for the upcoming Space Wars? Space Wars. I don't know. I'm hearing like a nice late 80s, not 1880s, late 1980s jam. That just made me think of the band Murder by Death. I don't know if anyone's ever heard the song Spring Break 1889. Let's look that up really quick. If anyone's listened to Murder by Death, that'd be cool. That's a cool band no one talks about enough. They've been doing their thing for quite some time now. Spring Break 1899. Murder by Death. They're kind of like this singer obviously loves Johnny Cash. This is one of my favorite albums by this band. I've loved them for quite some time, ever since their very first. I think their first one is Who Will Survive and What Will Be Left of Them. It's phenomenal. And then from there they really got into more of a Johnny Cash type sound. Very good band. I believe that she's a cellist, the string player. They play at the hotel where The Shining was filmed every year. They have a big New Year's celebration there, huge concert. They play in caves every year, the same cave every year, I believe. I've only seen them in concert twice at normal venues. One in Connecticut. That one I remember very well. I sing at the top of my lungs. I love that band. But Red of Tooth and Claw is my favorite album by them. And I think Spring Break 1899 is the last song on that album. It's a really good album. Did you hear that? Something's outside. Something's moving outside. I think it's a garbage can being looted by some raccoons. So I just want to really quick tell you more about that Silent Barker Watchdog satellite. Because that's a funny one. Funny sound. The United States Space Force is about to get, and this is from September of 2023, to get an unprecedented view of some of the most distant reaches of Earth orbit to safeguard national interests after a stunning Sunday morning rocket launch from Florida. After a series of delays, the United Launch Alliance launched the new multi-payload Silent Barker mission, also designated as NROL 107, into orbit for the Space Force and the National Reconnaissance Office. It sounds like it's a Lockheed Martin name and number. I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure that's kind of like the ones I mentioned earlier. It soared spaceward into the blue sky atop an Atlas V rocket that lifted off from Space Launch Complex 41 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. You guys know that story about the launch, the Space Force, SpaceX launch place that's getting sued by the nude colony? I know, another tangent. But maybe we'll talk about that today. That's a funny thing to search. We'll come back to that in a minute. At the request of the Space Force and NRO, ULA representatives ended live coverage of the launch minutes after liftoff as the Atlas V rocket jettisoned its clamshell-like payload, fairing exposing the military satellites of the Silent Barker. They always Always cut the live footage. You guys, did you see the footage going around that was viral yesterday on Sunday of people saying that they caught a glitch on Orion, on the spacecraft that's up there now with the astronauts, and that perhaps it was they caught what looked like a projection. Well, they're saying it's fake, like it was AI generated or something. And you can go look at the original video. It's not there. I did not do all that yesterday because I was just trying to enjoy Easter. But these things find me. They're beamed into my molars here, and sometimes I just can't help it. But get this information. But so supposedly that's fake. But got to be careful because they're like, okay, the people who don't believe in space, we got to make them look crazy. So let's make them share this video so we can discredit them. So that's why you have to be on your tippy toes on the internet, because they're trying to catch you. They're trying to catch you. Sunday's launch came after a series of delays with the Space Force mission. Plans to launch the flight on August 29th were delayed by weather impacts from what was the tropical storm Idalia. A launch attempt on September 9th was delayed by a technical issue. And now, going back to Orion, this $23 million toilet keeps breaking, and they're complaining about the smell. Can you imagine all the money they spend on these silly things and the toilets don't work? All right. One more paragraph here, then we'll move on. Silent Barker marked they didn't even spell marked right. Space.com, what are you doing? Marked the 18th and penultimate Atlas V mission for the NRO to launch from Cape Canaveral. ULA will soon replace the rocket with its new Vulcan Centaur. Speaking of centaurs, China had on display robot centaurs. You could wear a robot piece that would pretty much turn you into a human robot centaur. Just last week. While there were also giant 9-foot-tall robots doing battles in Detroit. And a 200-year-old tortoise that thankfully survived a crypto scam. That was all last week. The mission will replace multiple highly secretive payloads into geosynchronous orbit. So that is what that is. I thought I had something else here. Yes. All right, so we are talking about Space Wars. I am at the sciencefocus.com. This is part of the BBC. From 2019. Space War, the new arms race above our heads. Forget the traditional battlegrounds of land, sea, and air. Rapid developments in technology and our reliance on satellites for everything from communication to navigation and pushing conflicts into a new arena, outer space. While addressing members of the U.S. military at the White House recently, Donald Trump spoke of his desire to create a sixth branch of the United States Armed Forces, one dedicated to conflicts in space. So obviously we'll go back to Space Force here. We know this was created. The comments may have drawn skepticism from some quarters, but many experts believe space war is indeed coming. According to the narrative, whatever conflicts start on Earth are going to quickly move into space. From there, it's easy to conjure up images of laser guns, exploding satellites, and rockets arcing around Earth to take out orbiting targets. I believe we're there. Better up there than down here, you may think. Well, as a space lawyer, I can say that is wrong, but I imagine they're going to say the same thing. But dig deeper, and the reality is very different and ultimately much more frightening. In fact, according to how you define space war, or how you define space, there's an argument that says it's already taking place. Yes, I believe so. Unless you're very narrowly defining space warfare as blowing up satellites and shooting lasers, there are elements of space warfare that date back to the Gulf War 1991, says Professor Joan Johnson Fries at the U.S. Naval War College in Rhode Island. Ooh. During that war, the GPS satellite navigation system allowed the American-led coalition to make a fast, accurate run across the Kuwaiti desert to outflank the invading Iraqi forces and ensure victory. Fast forward to today, and although the superpowers aren't in open conflict with one another, they're already testing each other's space capabilities. In 2014, Chinese hackers broke into the U.S.'s National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, that's NOAA, they call it NOAA, weather and satellite systems. Russian cyber warriors have also hacked satellite transmissions, and it's a sure bet the U.S. has done the same back. The reason is that a superpower's modern military relies on space as never before. Communication, navigation, and surveillance are the foundations that allow a military force to achieve its objective. Therefore, the first thing combatants are going to do in any future conflict is try to remove these capabilities. But the space war cliche of actually blowing up the satellites will be a last resort for one simple reason: the amount of space debris it would create. Unless, of course, they've already developed things that can take care of space debris. The same way that that little kid developed something to take out pollution with a robot in the oceans. I mean, like, or even think about the AI lasers they're fitting onto tractors for farmland to stop using pesticides, and these lasers very quickly kill all bugs. If they can do that, they can do that to debris in space. That's just my opinion. When a satellite fragments, it generates tens of thousands of pieces of space debris. These circle the Earth at speeds more than 7 kilometers per second. At these speeds, even a coin-sized piece of shrapnel will deliver the energy equivalent of an exploding hand grenade if it hits another satellite. And as you know, I have clients as a space lawyer who've had some space debris fall through their roof recently, and we are now suing NASA and the ALE company, ALE, that is the company in Japan that is creating space entertainment, basically remote-controlled meteors for your pleasure. This will instantly destroy it, creating tens of thousands more pieces of debris and making more satellite collisions inevitable. The kicker is that space debris is uncontrollable, and so satellites will be destroyed indiscriminately. I don't think they care. If it's space war, they're not going to care. And I think they have other ways of taking it out. But that means that yours will be taken down as well as those of your enemies. Space war is a lot about mutually assured destruction. When you get the lasers involved, it's going to be insane. In the nightmare scenario known as the Kessler syndrome, we lose access to space entirely because there's so much junk up there that anything launched is instantly sandblasted into more debris. Losing space in this way would have major consequences, not just for the military, but for all of us. Every single day, we rely on satellites to make our lives easier. From weather reports to knowing when the bus is coming, talking to friends on mobile devices to watching videos online, everything uses data that's either generated by satellites or routed through them. If we lose the satellites, we lose our way of life. Hence, the superpowers have been looking at other ways of disabling satellites but keeping them intact. And this is where the lasers come in. On March 1st, Russian President Vladimir Putin delivered his annual address to the Federal Assembly in Moscow. About 105 minutes into the presentation, he said that Russia had begun equipping its military with laser weapon systems. Lasers. He stated that he would not go into details, but showed a video of an articulated truck with what looked like a large telescope attached to it. Such a system looks exactly like an anti-satellite laser weapon designed to dazzle spy satellites so they can't take images, according to Stuart Eaves. He was in the other article we read, a mission concepts engineer and industrial chair of the Space Information Exchange, the forum for the UK government to discuss emerging threats with industry. There have been reports from the US that some of its surveillance satellites have been lased from facilities from facilities on the ground. Lased is the term he's using now to dazzle the satellite with a laser. To laze. So that's going on. There's not much there that is that interesting, but I just want to say that this is the narrative they have been putting out there for quite some time now. And this one part here from another expert they're talking to, this guy Doug Little, who is a CEO of In Space Missions. And he says every mission that goes up to service a satellite could be used by an unscrupulous nation to damage it instead. This gray area extends beyond servicing missions in the same way that a knife can be used to eat a meal or to murder someone. Nearly everything in space is a dual-use technology, says Little. That might remind people of what we went over early on in 2026 when Yuval Harari compared AI to a knife that you could use to cut your bread with or butter or to kill. The Kessler syndrome, I just thought that's interesting. Something we could all, depending on the way you define outer space, if it's just low Earth orbit or you believe in the infinite vast space that they've made up. But anyway, low Earth orbit, which we know is the area of outer space around Earth that encloses all orbits below 2,000 kilometers, is the home of the International Space Station and of thousands of satellites. It is also becoming a hazardous arena, littered with mindless space junk and inoperable spacecraft orbiting at outrageous speeds. I imagine it the same way I imagine real space, which is the bottom of the ocean in general, and all these sunken ships. There's probably just like a bunch of dead satellites up there floating around. It's a reality quite like Alfonso Cuarón's film Gravity, and it's called the Kessler syndrome. If it plays out like the most pessimistic scenario, prepare to spend a few years without cell phone reception, internet, and a 5-day weather forecast. Internet apocalypse. That's what they've been saying. Quick tangent. Let's just see if there's any updates to the internet apocalypse. Last I looked at this was a few years, or maybe a year or two ago. Let's see if there's anything new out there preparing us for the internet apocalypse. No, but they are saying Q-Day, encryption apocalypse by 2029. They're talking about quantum computing, which something we don't talk about enough on this show. But okay, nothing brand new yet. It's been about a year or two since the last internet apocalypse article that was going around for a little bit there. The Kessler syndrome is a theory proposed by NASA scientist Donald J. Kessler in 1978, used to describe a self-sustaining cascading collision of space debris in LEO, low Earth orbit. It's the idea that two colliding objects in space generate more debris that then collides with other objects, creating even more shrapnel and litter until the entirety of the LEO is an impassable array of super swift stuff. At that point, any entering satellite would face unprecedented risks of headfirst bombardment. Just put a plow on top. It's like a snow plow. Just put a giant plow up top. I'm sure that's not going to be very easy to fly up, but build it. Maybe it's a self-assembling one once you get up there. Solved. Easy. I am a scientist. American astrophysicist Kessler published a paper in 1978 called The Collision Frequency of Artificial Satellites, which predicted that by 2000, the density of space debris in Earth's orbit would be so great that random collisions would be inevitable, and that the outcome of these random collisions would be more debris and subsequently more collisions. Imagine if they blame some space debris taking out something on another country, and that starts a space war. We got to consider false flags in space. That's the future of false flags. I guess one could argue that the Challenger could be one. Tripoli made a really good point about the Challenger being like a Northwoods scenario on Danny Jones' show. Now, when he was on recently, there's theories about the people never being on there. We've allegedly spotted them elsewhere. And if they plan things like Northwoods, which they did, it's hard not to think that it's a possibility that they've done this elsewhere and they would carry out such things. This is speaking of Alex in the beginning. Sandy Hook. One reason I defend Alex is free speech. You can say whatever you want. Sorry if it makes you sound like a ghoul sometimes, and I hate even questioning things that have to deal with the death of children allegedly. So we have free speech. He has every right to do it. But we also have history, and we know that the government has plotted to kill or to pretend to kill people. So it's okay. It's unfortunate, but it's okay to question these things because you have to, because it's all part of the narrative war. They're trying to trick you to make you afraid so they can own you, control you, and puppeteer you through the fear. That's what this is all about. That's what the devil does. Get you out of your safe zone and get you to a place where you can be easily manipulated by fear. Kessler's paper was significant because it emphasized the imminent danger of small debris in orbit. So that is what Kessler syndrome is, if you are not familiar with it. And it is fascinating. At some other point, we'll get into this. I didn't find it yet because it's been a little bit since I saw the article, but there's a nudist colony outside of one of the SpaceX launch pads. I forget if it's in like Louisiana or it's in Florida, and it's like they're suing SpaceX because they're so upset that it's interfering with it being a nudist colony. I have no dog in that fight, but I think it's really funny. I think it's really funny. Anyway, when I took my sip of coffee, it reminded me of Scott Adams. And Scott Adams, he, like everyone, someone I thought was very smart. I had disagreements with him, never really like personally, but just from watching from a distance. But I think he's a smart guy. I grew up reading Dilbert in the Times Herald Record, my paper in Orange County, New York. I loved reading the paper as a kid. I read it a lot. Anyway, Scott was one of the first people to say a very nice thing about my writing, and it was about my Kanye stories. And that was really I really appreciated that because that was at a time when everyone on the planet hated Kanye, and I felt like the last Kanye fan in the world. I knew I wasn't. We're watching images of his performance this past weekend, and it is mind blowing. That stage setup is insane, and as I told you in 2022. Repeatedly, nothing this guy can do will stop him from having a comeback that you can't even possibly imagine. And now he's in a stadium with 80,000 people screaming every word for 3 hours. Pretty cool. But, everyone, I was getting blacklisted and hated on, and articles written about me in Media Matters because of my support for Kanye, for Ye. And Scott Adams made a really nice video about it. And that was extremely encouraging. Because he totally got it. He got exactly what I was trying to say. He read every word, and it meant a lot for him to make that video. I was like, even more of a nobody than a little less of a nobody, but I was a pretty big nobody then with a really big opportunity to cover a very crazy story that had been going viral in that moment. And I felt like I was the only person who could tell you this story in a manner that was respectful and true. I know I'm also biased because I'm a Kanye fan, but for those of us who know Kanye and the stuff he's done over the years, everything that was going on in 2022 was like an evolution of things he'd done prior. Using the Confederate flag, thinking about putting the image of the doctor who killed his mother on an album cover. Kanye's always kind of done these things. George Bush doesn't like black people. Hold on, I'm gonna let you finish. But Beyonce had the best video of the year. All that kind of stuff. He's a barn burner. But Scott said nice things, and one of those nice things I am now using as a blurb for my book, which I just announced earlier today on Twitter, and I am very proud of this book. It is called Good Villains, and it will be out September 1st through Skyhorse Publishing. And it starts with me and my family leaving New York and all the crazy stuff that was going on there, and then goes right into Kanye stories. A lot of new stuff, a lot of crazy stuff, and then kind of follows me zigzagging through the country for a few years and just getting into trouble. And, I guess I'll pull up the description here. But it is available for pre-order right at this very minute. So if you use Amazon, you can get it there. If you use Barnes & Noble, you can get it there. Walmart, it's going to be everywhere. And it is available for pre-order already right now. Apple, it will have an audiobook. Right now, hardcover and ebook are available for pre-order. But I'm extremely grateful to Skyhorse for giving this a home. And I'm stoked on the cover. I am extremely proud of this book and this writing. It's my favorite book. This will be my 5th book, but this will be my first official book. I should put this properly. My first book on an official, through an official publisher. Skyhorse put out a book that I reference quite a bit. They put out RFK Jr.'s book, The Real Anthony Fauci, which I read during lockdowns, which is an insane book. So shout out to them. This is the description that they have written for the book. I'll read that to you now. But Good Villains is an odyssey into the minds of America's most polarizing figures, those who blur the line between icon and outcast. It begins with an unexpected call from Kanye West in late 2022, shortly after his billion-dollar empire collapsed and his presidential ambitions spiraled into chaos. Those were crazy times. What unfolds is a journey across the country as author Shane Cashman gains unprecedented access to cultural figures such as Alex Jones, Carrie Lake, Riff Raff, culminating in a harrowing profile of a woman at the center of a viral human trafficking controversy. Ooh, those were fun times. These are not easy stories. They are intimate, unflinching portraits of the people who provoke, polarize, and challenge the mainstream narrative. At once cultural investigation and personal memoir, Good Villains asks what happens when a journalist steps inside the blast radius of fame, infamy, and digital hysteria, as Cashman embeds himself deeper in the lives of the infamous and becomes part of the story he set out to chronicle. Good Villains is a meditation on what it means to be adored, condemned, and obsessively watched in the modern world. I was weird reading in third person, so I'm going to switch it to me now. But I'm reading the description they wrote here. I trespass into the upper echelon of America's celebrity and politics and send back a dispatch from the center of a culture in collapse, where the most vilified figures hold a mirror up to this world and its flaws. The result is a gripping, dramatic look at cancel culture, fame, and the media machine, told with journalistic detail and exceptional style. Well, thank you for writing that for me, Skyhorse. That's a cool description. The book is now available for pre-order. I'm going to try to not to be too annoying about this book, but I'm pretty proud of it. I'm going to promote it quite a lot. And I'll be doing some sort of book tour at some point. I like to be out and about in the world and do some readings, signings, and I'll do a bunch of shows, and we'll see. But as we get closer and closer to September 1st, I'm going to get more and more annoying and promote this book because I'm very proud of it. And I have reread this thing a bunch of times, and it's fun. It's fun. I'm really looking forward to sharing with everybody. And if you'd like to support me and support books, which I think are very important, you can pre-order it now, and which is a crazy thing to say. Finally, I've been working on this for a long time. I mean, years in the making, but then the past year, every day. And that means while I'm driving, I'm talking, I'm doing the thing I was telling you guys last week with like Weiner from Mad Men. I'm into my phone dictating chapters and edits, and just a lot of work on this book to get to where it is now, and very, very stoked. And so Scott Adams has one of the blurbs for the books. Rest in peace to Scott Adams. And I got a blurb here from Bret Easton Ellis, and it's cool, man. I love books. My dream was to always write books, and this will be my fifth. My first book I put out, the other books I put out are self-published. I made my own press called Vulture House Press, and I released a bunch of stuff through there. My first book I wrote and released I wrote it during lockdowns, released it in October of that year, of 2020. And that became a bestseller on Amazon. But that was just straight up DIY. I did no help other than my friends on the internet. And then I did I don't even say the title of this book anymore because I try not to curse, but it's called the Fucking Lunatic, something that was called by an ex-friend online. And that is conversations between me and a bunch of people on the internet about lockdowns and vaccines and all that good stuff. And then the other two books I put out through Timcast, which are the Inverted World books, Volume 1 and Volume 2, which are still available. And I'm very proud of those books. I'm proud of all those books. But this new one is awesome. And if I might say so myself. And if you want to give me a birthday present, you can go pre-order this now, or at least share it. You know, I know it's tough to spend money, and I hate asking people to buy things. So I understand that. and I'm not the best salesman. But I'm going to try to be for this book because I believe in this book. And yeah, so September 1st, it's coming out. You can pre-order it now. It's available everywhere. I'll have it at this point. By the time you guys are watching this, I'll probably have it on my Instagram and pinned to my Twitter. You'll see the book cover and the description. And share it, please, if you can. Pre-order if you can. And that's that. You'll hear more about it as time goes on. I'm sure you'll get sick of me doing interviews about the book, but I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to talking about these people. A lot of fun people show up in the book. A lot of things I learned, things I revisited that were crazy times, but I think important because they help me understand the internet a little more, or the narrative machine a little more, or the difference and the similarities between corporate press and independent press. And really just human nature and good and evil and controversy and what it means to be quote unquote famous, what that does to someone, what it does to people. So it covers a lot of ground. Talked to a lot of people, from Kanye to people sweeping up courtrooms at around this time of day as I waited outside for a Carrie Lake's court hearing about election fraud. So I zigzag all over the country, and it covers a lot of ground kind of leading up and just after the general election and some other stuff. So thank you guys for the support. I appreciate it. That is Good Villains by me, available for pre-order everywhere right now. So please do support if you can. And I'm going to go get the kids up, make some breakfast. For those who tuned in late, don't understand what the heck I'm talking about. It is at this point around 6 in the morning, and I'm about to hit the road for a road trip on my birthday with the family to go see my parents. And I'll be, I don't know, recording from the road, maybe recording from the wilderness. We'll see how it goes. But thank you guys for tuning in, for listening. We are underneath the hidden space war at this very moment. If you heard that bird, it's not a laser. It's a bird. It might be a fake bird. I'll go look after I'm done recording. But there is a hidden space war up there. I believe that is happening, and I believe that is creating a lot of the stuff we are seeing falling out of the sky at this very moment. It doesn't mean there's other things not happening up there, like spacecraft or things we've built flying around in the sky, and Lockheed Martin zigzagging their own having their own joyride in the sky with things they've developed, maybe through skunkworks. But strange times indeed. If you haven't listened to the Switchfoot song that came out a week or two ago, Wake Up Mr. Crow, it's a really good song. And you'll know why I reference that after saying strange times. Go listen to that song. All right, guys, have a wonderful rest of your night, and I will see you tomorrow. Later.